I wanted to show you a different kind of tuner. So you guys have seen me use tuners before. It's no secret that I'm a pretty big fan of them. And I don't use them, I don't use them to circumvent good reloading policies or practices. What I do is I use them to fine tune or tweak a load or to adapt when I'm at a match. And something goes south. It's sort of an emergency button, if you will, and everybody treats tuners a little bit differently, and that just happens to be how I am currently using them. But I wanted to show you guys something that was just a little bit different. This is what's called the Bramley Tuner, and let me take it off here real quick. And it is, like a lot of tuners, it is an adjustable weight at the end of the barrel. You can see that compared to, every tuner sort of attaches differently. Like some literally bolt on, some are like rubber bands or heavy rubber weights. This one happens to be threaded like a couple others, and it uses a relatively fine thread. And then the tuner mechanism itself has an O-ring on the inside here, and that is what grips the barrel. In fact, you can kind of see where it's just a little bit of like rubber marks from it. But that is what holds it in place. So there's no set screws on this one. It's just sits there under friction tension. And you can see here. So it just threads on. And then once the O-ring hits, which is right about there, then it starts to require some tension. And I've never actually counted, but let's count just for fun here. Where is it? Okay, so there's where the threads start, and we'll basically say that's 0. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 10, 11, 12. Wow, it goes even more than I thought. 13, 14. So 14, and then mine, where I made my notch mark, it's 2 notches off, but basically. So that's quite a few revolutions that you can make. Dan Bramley, who happens to be the captain, the current captain of the U.S. F class or F Open rifle team, is the one that designed this. And he's a friend of mine, and I will say, I'm fortunate that I get to hang around a lot of really creative, pretty inspiring guys that also have a lot of technical knowledge. I can't make stuff like this. I don't know how to run a lathe or, machine or anything like that. So this is beyond my scope. But like some other people, Dan is incredibly talented in this manner. It's just something he does as a side gig. And, he just wanted to make a different kind of tuner in terms of how it adapted. His tuner is a little finer in terms of, like, if I go from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3, because his threads are a little thinner. You are running less tuner out at a given time. So I have found, I honestly don't know what he recommends, as funny as that sounds, but typically with other tuners, I've run 3 thousandths or 3 notches, I should say. I will say with his, I tend to run 5, so I'll go 0 and then 5, 10, especially with component shortages as it is. And with his, I'm not afraid to run out past 0, but in all fairness, I've done that with some other tuners lately as well, just to see what happens. But his tuner definitely holds up well past 1 revolution. I have some friends that use this tuner, and there's been times where they've run 1 or 2 revolutions out and gotten some improvement when at a match, in very different conditions. In fact, a friend of mine recently placed very well at the California State Championship using one of these, and I think he came out 1.5 revolution on his ammo, and it really tightened up the group. Now, anecdotally, we're going to get to some actual usage here in a minute, but anecdotally, I'll tell you, I took this particular barrel with me to the California State Championship this past week. I was shooting an unknown bullet to me with unknown powder in some subpar brass. And, as is the case, I had it tuned up okay, but not great because of the combination, and I'm not used to it. And I went through about 7 different tunes trying to find the one that would work. Ultimately, I went from shooting very poorly in the beginning on Saturday and being near the bottom of a 27-person pack to finishing 10th, which was a huge accomplishment. And I finished 3rd on the day Sunday. And, that is largely because I'm pretty familiar with how to use a tuner and to get some advantage out of it if my load isn't working. So let me do this. I'm going to do just a basic load that I know works. I'm going to take it out to the range here. We're going to start at 0, and then I'm going to show you, just at least for one revolution, maybe a little more, what going every 5 notches does. It is very similar to other tuners that I have reviewed as well. And you have to remember that a tuner is nothing more than a way to change the barrel harmonics. Now, this goes back, I don't even know, decades, where guys would even just wrap rubber bands around their barrel and run them up and down. Some guys have used O-rings in the past. In fact, I've seen guys who actually mill or lathe in little notches across their barrel for about 6 or 8 inches, and they'll move like an O-ring or a set of O-rings back and forth. A tuner can only do so much, right? Like, the tuner just changes the harmonics. They all basically do the same thing. And people say, oh, what's the best tuner? What's the best tuner? The best tuner is the one that you enjoy using, that you think looks the best to some degree, because obviously you want your gun to look good, but you want it to function well. And, there's really only 2 tuners I'll use. It's this one and the Cortina tuner, and I've got both on different barrels. I know how they work. I really love how it works, and I'm really comfortable moving them around and knowing what I can expect out of them. Now, could I put on a different tuner and probably get some similar results? Sure, it would take some time to get used to how they work. I just happen to really like the way that the Bramley looks, and I like the way that the Cortina looks. So, and they're both great guys. I mean, I did buy these, so, it wasn't free. Like, I did pay for this one. I bought my Cortina tuner. I have gotten some demos in the past, but I will tell you this one I did pay for. So, in any event, I do like these. I am a fan of them. And I'm going to go take out a known load, and I'm just going to show you what a tuner can do. Now, I'm not going to do an actual, tune a whole thing through. But I want to show you how a tuner, in this case, the Bramley tuner, dramatically affects a load going, kind of in from a very tight group. You'll see it kind of turn over. It kind of goes tall, then spins, and then tightens up. And this does a very effective job at helping you identify where that you want that tightening up ultimately. So let's head out to the range. Let me shoot a few. We'll go over them, and I'll be back. Okay, we are back from the range. Sorry, it was raining yesterday, so my paper is a little wonky. But we're back from the range. I wanted to show you what I had. Now, a couple caveats. I picked a load that I knew worked with components how they are. This is a load that I know is pretty dialed in. Is it an absolutely perfect load? No. Like, if I was going to a major match, I would probably do a little more load development before I hit it with the tuner. But I think this gives a really good idea of how a tuner can help you really pull in a load that's good to a little tighter depending on the circumstances. Now, as I've said with other tuners, whether it's the Cortina or in this case the Bramley tuner, I always try to develop my loads in a way that I don't have to use the tuner, right? My goal is not to create a load that I then tune in. My goal is to create a load that shoots as good at 0 as possible and then affords me the luxury of being able to tune it if the circumstances require it. And if I do that, I want to know where my other tuning settings would be so that if I'm at a match and conditions are weird, maybe I'm at different elevations or something happens. I don't know. I've seen it happen and I've done it. that I'm able to tune it in. So if you look here, and I'll try to help a little bit, this is 3. So everything on the paper is 3 shots except for this last one. So just, understand these are all 3-shot groups at 100 yards. This is my zero tune, and that was just blow off. So those were the first 3 shots, just blow off from a clean barrel. Then we have the actual shots at 0 to get us rolling. And then what I did is I moved up 5 on the tuner and just kept going. And I had enough ammo to shoot to a full rotation plus 20. So you can see I did 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. And then this is 40, which is technically 1 revolution. So then we have revolution plus 5, 10, 15, and 20. I did not go and look at the paper between the time that I shot the groups and the time I did these validating tests down here. So I was using my scope to try to determine the best spot, and I'm going to show you how that could have made a little bit of a difference. But as we look at this, you're going to see that we've got a relatively tight group, and then you can see just a little bit of vertical. They're stacked on top of each other. And then at 5, it turns a little and goes horizontal. And yes, I do realize everybody's going to say, well, this is just 3 shots out of, whatever. And there's a lot of things that could affect this. That is absolutely true. But you will see, the more you use something like this, you will see patterns that you can identify. So you can see it's kind of a little open but tall, little open but tall. Then it turns a little. We get a pretty tight group, and then it starts to push some vertical here. So 2 shots in 1, 2 shots in 1. 2 shots and 1, and in a lot of cases, I can't say that there was a pattern. Up here on 15, if I remember right, I shot these 2 and then dropped 1. This I shot 2, then 1, but then down here it was 1, 1, 1, and then 1, 1, 1. So, no matter what, I believe the paper, and what that's telling me is that as the tuner moved out of setting 10 into 15, 20, 25, and 30, it didn't like it, right? You can see, if it was just me, it would be like one of these would be off and then it would tighten back up. But this is clearly something in the tuner setting that's causing some vertical or little flyers here. So this is not great, this is not great, this is not great, not great. And then it sort of tightens up again here. So then at 35 and then a full rotation, 3 touching but vertical, 3 touching but vertical. Then we get to 10 and it's 1 hole, and then we get to rotation and 15 and it's basically 1 hole but a little horizontal, and then rotation at plus 20 we go to vertical again. So looking through my scope, I wasn't able to fully tell exactly what was vertical and what was horizontal. It was pretty darn close, but for the sake of doing my validating tests, I said, well, 10 is 1 hole, 15 is 1 hole. I like how it has a little more horizontal than vertical to it, so I picked in between. So I went to 12. So rotation 10 and 15 were great. I picked something in the middle, and you can see here it's just 1 ragged hole. That's 3 shots right there. So I really liked that, but I also wanted to go test something at the beginning of the tune. Looking at this, obviously 0 was pretty good. 5 was really tight and 10 was really tight. So I decided to pick something, right here in the middle, and I went with 7, and that gave me this one, which if you look at it, it's okay. I mean, it's got this flyer up here. It's nothing that I love. I certainly would want to do a little more testing with both of these just to make sure they're real. But if this kept testing like this, if I shot another group, I would throw away this one. But there's no telling, and I didn't have enough ammo. But what I thought I would do is retest the 12 setting since it looks so good. And then you can see that's 4 shots right there. And I was really happy with that. Now, a little bit of vertical in it. And again, this is not definitive, but the goal of this is to show you what the tuner is capable of doing, not what I'm necessarily doing with the tuner. But you can see tight, opens up, starts tightening up again, and then starts opening up again. There is a pattern to this, and I don't care whose tuner you use, at least in my experience and talking to a lot of guys, this is what you're going to see. I don't care if you're using rubber bands. I don't care if you're using other brands. They all do the same basic function. You have to understand how it's going to affect your groups. So, the only other thing I'll tell you, like I've said, I was at the California State Championship this past weekend. I was shooting new bullets, really bad brass. Like, it was a horrible combination. A shot out barrel. It wasn't a match I had in my rotation. I wasn't prepared for it. And so I sort of took it as an opportunity to test something out. So I took some really heavy bullets with some poorly managed brass in a barrel that had about 1,400 rounds in it. And I started out on Saturday morning shooting, I think I dropped 8 or 9, I can't remember. It was like lights out conditions. I mean, it should have been clean target shooting. I dropped, 8, I think it was 8, if I remember right. And that was, in fact, let me look it up real quick because I'll tell you the progression here, and it helps to understand what was happening. So Saturday morning, I dropped 7. So I dropped 7 Saturday morning, and then conditions got really bad, and I did end up dropping 11. And then I made a tuner change and dropped 6 for the last relay on Saturday. And, the thing to think is like, it's easy to look back with, hindsight and say, I should have tuned it more. I should have tuned it more. I get scared. I'm human. Sometimes you think, I could tune it worse. Like 6 wasn't horrible or 7 wasn't horrible. It certainly wasn't what first and second were doing, but you get a little bit of fear, and I didn't know exactly what the tuner was going to do to this load. So I got as aggressive as I felt like getting. But then after looking at my targets and getting back to the hotel Saturday night, I took a look and ultimately made another change on Sunday morning. Still dropped 8, but I made a pretty aggressive tuner change. I think I changed it 5 or 7 numbers up. And the group physically got tighter. I made some bad wind calls, as it were, and lost actually more outside on the left and right than vertical. So that gave me a lot of confidence. Went into the last relay and only dropped 1. So, it's not a magic bullet, right? It's not going to fix every problem you have, but it is a tool. And I've said this repeatedly on other videos that it is a tool that I like having in my toolbox. Whether it's the Bramley, whether it's the Cortina, they're both great tuners. They both do a very effective job of letting you make decisions on what it can do to help you. The more you test and the more you understand what a tuner can do for you, I think the more you will find value in it. My last bit of advice, and again, I've said this a lot, don't mess with it unless you have to. It is an emergency button, okay? I would go to a match. Let's just say I had done testing on this and I had repeatedly gotten, these kinds of settings, at 0 and 12, rotation plus 12. Sure, I would easily go to a match saying, look, I have very, very good confidence that rotation plus 12 is going to give me some just absolutely hammering loads here. But let's say I fly and I go somewhere that's 2,000 or 3,000 feet, different elevation and different humidity or something weird that, I'm not, like, things happen. I don't know. It just happens. And you can't prepare for it. And let's say this load started opening up. Well, I know that I have some ability to play up or down 2, 3 settings from 12. So if I wanted to try fine tuning this one, I might go down to 11 or 10 or up to 13 or 14. Or I know I could go back to somewhere between 0 and 10. Maybe I set it on 5 and see if things tighten up. You will see a difference on target. I've watched Dan Bramley, who this tuner is made by. I've watched him do it at matches, and I've watched other guys who make tuners do it at matches. It works. You just have to know what to do with it, and you have to know how to use it sparingly. So, hope that helps you guys out, gives you a different perspective. Well, it's actually the same perspective, just with a different tuner. To show you that, they do work if you work them. So anyway, hope you guys have a good one. We'll talk soon. See you later.